Welcome back, I'm Jax, and this is my cargo truck that I'm converting into a tiny living space. In the coming videos, we're going to be installing the electrical system, which involves installing solar controller, lithium batteries, and a big giant inverter charger. So stick around and check it out. All right, so before I can get started on the electrical installation, I've got to clean this mess up. I've got tools and supplies and trash pretty much littered all over the inside here that I got to make some organization of so I can get started on the actual installation. So I'm going to dismantle the two bench seats a little bit in order to facilitate me running some conduit across from one bench to the other. Now I'm going to run the conduit underneath the vehicle, but I'm going to lay it out from above so that I make sure I get it exactly where I want to get it. So I'm going to go ahead and start dismantling these two cabinets in such a way that I can work on that. So I think I got the basic layout of the electrical components sorted out here. Maximize the space and still allow a great deal of storage over on this other side. Now, one of the things that I need to do with this bench is to ventilate it, because this this inverter here is going to be putting off some heat. So I definitely want to make sure that I can ventilate this cabinet. So what I've got planned is I'm going to install some of these grills here. They'll be along the front of the cabinet, and then I'll have one on the back side. But the other end of the cabinet's a little bit different, because that's where the breaker panels are going to go. So we've got the 110 volt and the 12 volt switch panels. But over here, what I've got is a small area that I was going to use to vent, but those grills were too big to fit in this hole. So what I ended up getting with these snap-in drains for a 4-inch PVC pipe. And so that'll be, all I gotta do is cut a couple of holes, and I'll just push those in, and that'll look pretty clean. And it'll get good ventilation in this corner, so that should work out pretty good. Perfect. All right, so I've got the 12 volt and the 110 volt panels installed, and I've got the two vents they're just pushed in. They should hold pretty nicely. That's the back of the panels. Seems pretty legit to me. Alright, so while I'm waiting for a few key electrical components to be delivered, I've got this bay pretty well sorted out. I spent a couple of days thinking and pondering and moving things around and adjusting to come up with a solution that I think is going to work pretty well. I've got the batteries in a battery box. Yeah. So you got the batteries in a nice little battery box here that I made. It's elevated, so there's some airflow underneath, just to allow airflow through this whole bench. Now, additionally to the battery box, what I'm going to end up doing is fastening a board along the top to prevent those from coming out of that battery box. Haven't quite decided on the design yet, but that's essentially how I'm going to keep those batteries in place. I went ahead and I mounted the inverter charger here. I elevated that off the floor too with 3/4 of an inch space, so there's airflow underneath and also airflow in the back. That's where it's intended to be blown. There is a motorized fan here, so that'll help keep that cool. And then in the back here, I've got the MPPT controller, which is the solar charge controller. So basically the power coming from the solar panels goes into this and then connects into the battery system and charges the batteries through that. Basically this little fuse box here is going to connect each one of these the solar panels independently to the fuse box, and then the fuse box is going to get connected to the controller from there. Okay, so what I've got over here is another 12-volt fuse panel that's set up to be to take care of the main cabin lights, the over cabinet strip lights, the galley lights, and such like that. And then that'll be connected into the 12-volt panel over here. This is the 110-volt system that'll control the refrigerator and induction and all that. So I've got the two panels there set up. And that's about it. Now the other things that I've got down here are a couple of big bus bars. There's actually 3 bus bars, and there's a it's called a shunt, which is what allows the monitor for the battery system to display the charge and so on and so forth. So I've kind of got a plan how this is going to get wired in, and a basic layout of all the bus bars. I'm waiting for a couple of big fuse blocks to come, but otherwise I think, and of course then the wiring and all the lugs, but of course I think I've got this pretty well laid out how I want it in this area. There is going to be in addition down here there's going to be a switch which is going to turn on and off the circuit between the solar controller and the solar panels. So if I need to work on this, I can kill the power directly with that. And then there's going to be an additional on-off switch located right here, which I'll get back to this area, which is basically going to turn off the power coming from the batteries into the inverter charger. So if there's any kind of an issue or a problem, I need to kill the power from the batteries, I'll just flip that switch and everything's going to be dead in that area. You know, all of this 12-volt, 110-volt inverter charger stuff will be turned off. All right, so getting back to the side of the main face of the bench seats, I'm going to install, like I said, 2 of these louvered vents. There'll be the cutoff switch located roughly here, the other vent, and then I'm going to install 110 outlets, and then below that I'm going to install USB connectors, which I'm waiting for them to come in too as well. So those will get installed below that. So we'll have USB power and 110 power. Now the 110 is going to be actually 110. Now I could have gotten outlets that were dual purpose, USB ports, but then I'd be running 12-volt power off of a 110 conversion. It's more efficient to run 12-volt off of 12-volt because that is the system that I've got installed is 12-volt. So that's kind of the goal. So I'm going to be working on those things today, I think. I've got quite a few panels to remove and set up. And one other thing I've got is this right here, which is piece of Lexan that I'm gonna, I epoxy set these hinges on here, so hopefully that'll work out well. And I'm going to use this Lexan to cover the front of the breaker panel, so that way as you walk in and out of the van here, you're not going to be bumping into those switches. So this will actually be covered over there and protecting those switches. So that's something else that we'll be installing today too as well. So it is Memorial Day, Monday, Memorial Day, and so that's what I'm going to be spending my time, is working on the van. Got a late start out here, did some research this morning, got woken up and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go as far as I can today, and we'll see how far we get. All right. Just like that. All right, cool. So that's that. I got a little finger hole down here. That'll raise up. You get access to your breakers. Otherwise, they'll be protected from getting footed or anything. I mean, I got this protective layer here. I'll peel that off. Eventually we'll get that peeled off, but for right now we'll leave that on there so that don't get scratched up, and that's the job's done there. Okay, so I got the outlets, the vent, and the battery kill switch all installed there on this panel. So it probably doesn't look like much, but I spent the last several hours wiring up this 12-volt panel here. I've got everything ran as far as I can. I'm out of connectors, but that's a sub panel there for all the main cabin lights and stuff. There's some backlights on these two panels too that are 12 volts, so I gotta run those wires over there too. I was gonna start wiring up this other sub panel for the solar, but I ran out of connectors, so I'm sort of dead in the water now for that. But get online, make an order, and get those here as quick as I can, and hopefully by the end of the week we'll have this whole wiring thing wrapped up. Well, we're still waiting for some parts for the electrical system. Next few days, hopefully I'll see some of that. The cabling is going to be the biggest worry because it hasn't shipped yet. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and put together this bench seat, because I don't really need to. I need to get in here a couple more times for running a couple wires, but I think I can do that with it together. I just want to try to make some sort of progress in the meantime, so that should cover me for a minute. So what I'm going to need on the 110 side of things is I need a circuit for the refrigerator. I need a circuit for the induction cooktop. I need a circuit for the outlets on the countertop. And then I'm going to need a circuit for the outlets that are in the bench seats. All right, so I got some 12-3 wire that I'm going to run over. That's going to come over to this outlet box. And then it's going to split over to the outlet box that's on the other end of the bench. So let's get going on that. So this bench seat outlets, that wire is ran, and the outlet themselves are installed on both ends. Now I've got to run, working on the outlets for this side, but I'm thinking might run out of wire, so I'm gonna wait to run the wire from this outlet to that outlet, because that'd be an easy one to run later on. So I need to run 3 more lines, one for the galley outlets, one for the induction cooker, and one for the refrigerator. So I'm going to run those now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install one of these boxes right here. So there'll be an outlet on the outside of this wall here that'll be part of the galley. And then I can run a couple of more outlets down the galley later on as I work out where everything's going to go. But at least I'll have that main trunk wire run to there. And then right below that, I've got another outlet box that I'm going to mount. That's going to, we're going to plug the refrigerator and the induction cooker. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this outlet and we're going to split it. There's a little tab right there that I can break off, and I can install 2 separate circuits on this one outlet, because really we only need 1 plug for the fridge and 1 plug for the induction, but we do need 2 separate circuits to run those things. So that's what we're going to accomplish. We're going to have 2 circuits in this one box. So, well, par for the course. I need more materials to finish up a couple of aspects of the electrical project. I've got a bunch of stuff ordered. Did receive a few things today, but not everything that I need to, finish the whole project. But what we did accomplish today was I got the hot water tank circuit ran to the panel. I've got both the refrigerator and the stove circuits. Now there's 2 circuits here. Those are ran to the panel. Then this box is the galley outlets, which is, I'm going to have 2 more outlets on top of the above the counter here. But I'm out of wire, so I need some more 12 gauge 3 wire. So I got that on order, so I can finish that. I did get the bench outlets ran to the panel, but I'm again short on 12-3 wire for this run here to get over to that outlet over there. But otherwise, the outlets on this side are complete and wired, and they go to the panel. So that's looking pretty darn good. See, yesterday I did get the 12-volt pump for the water pump. That's all wired into the panel. Yeah, we got our second cutoff switch. Now that one there is specifically to shut off the solar controller, the solar from the solar controller. So we got that today, and I did run the ground wire for the inverter charger, and I think I got a pretty good layout here for the fuse blocks and the bus bars. So it's a little bit of a complicated mess, but the positive is going to come from the battery. It's going to go to the cutoff switch, then it's going to go to the bus bar. From the bus bar, it's going to go to this 300 amp fuse to the inverter charger. Also from the positive bus bar, it's going to go to the 80 amp fuse to the solar controller. Then we've got the negative bus bar. The negative terminals on the batteries are going to come around and they're going to hook to the shunt. Then it's going to come down and it's going to hook up to this negative bus bar. Then it's going to come around and hook up to the inverter charger, and then a different line is going to run over to the solar controller. So we're waiting for all the heavy wire to come and a few other odds and ends, but otherwise it's looking pretty good down here. So I'm going to need to secure these batteries down from the top. I've got a perimeter so the batteries can't slide fore and aft and side to side, but I need to keep them down. So I'm going to use this strut and some angle brackets that I'll bolt through the cabinet and into the wall over there, and then use some captive nuts and tighten this down. But first I want to put some rubber underneath this steel strutting, so that way it gives a little bit of a grip and a cushion and an insulator, just in case anything were to touch this metal wise. But I don't think that's going to be a problem, but we're going to throw an insulator under there anyways for a couple of different reasons. So let's put that together. All right, so that's it. So I got the batteries here secured now. I've got a piece of strutting, and these are angles that are designed for the strutting. So I lagged them into the wall over there, and I got a carriage bolt, a couple of heavy-duty carriage bolts on this side, and that'll keep the batteries from, you know, they're pretty darn solid. Now, one other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add these blocks in right here. Right behind the battery, and that'll keep them nice and tight from moving around up on the top side. So that'll go in there. So otherwise the batteries are now secure. Next up in the install list here are these 12-volt USB outlets. I'm going to install these. There's 4 of them. I'm going to install one under each one of these outlets. I've got 4 outlets. There we go. USB. Perfect. Looking good. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support this project, be sure to check out my Patreon below. Thanks a lot. See you guys next week.